let's make a website. Yeah? I think that sounds like fun. I'm feeling good today. It's a wonderful day to make something. So I'm going to get started on that. In fact, I've already kind of started. But in the back of my mind, I've always kind of wanted to just record this process for posterity. Maybe one day I'm an old man and I just want to look back at this for one reason or another. Maybe websites won't even exist. There won't even be a need for them anymore. Or maybe they won't exist the way that they do today. So this is me just keeping a record of this moment in my life and what the creative process looks like when making a website today in 2026. It's gonna be super casual. We're gonna have a good time. I'm just gonna screen share. I might be here in my office. I might be on a park bench somewhere. We're just gonna enjoy ourselves wherever we are when inspiration strikes and chip away at this. It's not gonna happen overnight. Whew, oops. So, great. I want to flag right from the beginning. This isn't really a tutorial. This is me just recording, and maybe there's something that's helpful, but I'm not here so much as a teacher, just somebody who's sharing my experience and process here. I appreciate you being here. I'm glad you're here. You are welcome here. You're welcome to follow along. That's why it's on YouTube. That's all. That's all I want to say there. Great. I do want to highlight one important bit, which is while I'm definitely going to be using modern tooling, good code editors, I'll probably leverage a large language model to help do a little bit of vibe coding here and there. I prefer Claude myself, but Anthropic has been one of our clients for a long time. I'm biased. All that said, I think it's important to not rely on these large language models, as convenient as they are. I think it's important to make this stuff yourself. It's fun. It's harder. It's more challenging and rewarding that way. And over the last year or so, I've been wrestling with this term, this idea. I'll switch back to this. The concept is called vibe coding. When I first heard it, I thought back to me, little old 19-year-old Jordan, or I'll say for the record, 21-year-old Jordan with a beer or a glass of wine next to him, maybe a joint in hand in front of my computer screen. That was vibe coding, That means something else now. Now it's this idea of writing a quick prompt and a large language model just kind of doing the work for you. It's amazing that you can pretty much one-shot a lot of basic things. It's getting more and more sophisticated. But I've wrestled with this because it really takes joy out of the creative process for me. And also, its work isn't as good. I think you can spin up something that is pretty good, pretty quick, but great things still take time. But more than that, more than just the output, I think that there's something greater at stake here whenever we rely on these tools too much. And I want to read you a letter from one of my favorite authors, Kurt Vonnegut. This was to a school. I guess some students wrote in. Dear Xavier High School, so on and so forth. I thank you for your friendly letters. You sure know... Oh, let me share this. You sure know how to cheer up a really old geezer in his sunset years. I don't make public appearances anymore because I now resemble nothing so much as an iguana. What I had to say to you, moreover, would not take long. To wit, practice any art: music, singing, dancing, acting, drawing, painting, sculpting, poetry, fiction, essays, reportage, no matter how well or badly, not to get any money or fame, but to experience becoming. To find out what's inside you, to make your soul grow. Seriously, I mean, starting right now, do art and do it for the rest of your lives. Draw a funny or nice picture of Miss Lockwood and give it to her. Dance home after school and sing in the shower, and on and on. Make a face in your mashed potatoes. Pretend you're Count Dracula. Here's an assignment for tonight. And I hope Miss Lockwood will flunk you if you don't do it. Write a 6-line poem about anything, but rhymed. No fair tennis without a net. Make it as good as you possibly can, but don't tell anybody what you're doing. Don't show it or recite it to anybody, not even your girlfriend or parents or whatever, or Miss Lockwood, okay? Tear it up into teeny weeny pieces and then discard them into widely separated trash receptacles. You will find that you have already been gloriously rewarded for your poem. You have experienced becoming, learned a lot about what's inside you, and you have made your soul grow. God bless you all. Kurt Vonnegut. Isn't that beautiful? I think what we do whenever we rely on these tools or things that make the act of creating a little too convenient, a little too automated or whatever, we rob ourselves of the gift of becoming, of growing our soul a little bit, learning something new. And so that's what I'm doing. Now I'm bending the rules here. I'm sharing this with the world. I'm not hiding this. You know, Mrs. Lockwood would flunk me, but I've spent my career not sharing a lot of the work that I do, and I don't care anymore. So there you have it. Okay, so let's get into it, shall we? Now that we've got that preamble out of the way. I have an outline to keep me on the rails here. Great. Why a personal site right now? Well, I have a website, and it works fine. It's been my website for a number of years. I think since, I don't know, 2020, 2021. It's funny. It's a little bit goofy. It's my head rolling around as a ball. And it's nice. People still message me about it from time to time, and I appreciate their interests. I like that they like it. But the reality is that I don't add to it very often because the way I built it, it's kind of complicated. It's not particularly easy to maintain. And what's difficult about that is, that's difficult. And I want to be able to have a place where I can freely come, drop off a couple of assets, and move on with my life. And the website that I'm looking for now is less of a marketing tool. I'm not trying to market my services or anything like that. I already have a design studio outside of this, and that's where I do that. But this is for me. This is my little corner of the internet, and I want something that can be a home for that content. Cool. Great. What else? Awesome. Let's just talk about the tech stack real quick. I've got a couple of ideas around what I'm shooting for, and I've already started kind of doodling on this a little bit. I am a big believer in the Vue ecosystem. Well, let's start there. Vue.js emerged a number of years ago. I don't even know how far back. But there was a fork in the road between React and Vue for me at my job, and everybody was doing React, and I understand why. I get it. I just never really liked the syntax. I always thought it was very messy and kind of confusing. What I liked about Vue was this idea of single file components, the idea of having HTML, or having your scripts, your HTML templates, and your styles all in one file, beautifully organized, which you can achieve this with other frameworks. It really appealed to me. It made sense. Everything was tightly scoped, and I liked that way of doing it and thinking about it. Vue offered this feature very early on. I also really despise Facebook and Meta. I know that there are a lot of brilliant people who work on React that aren't corrupt geese, but I much prefer open source community and people who are sort of creating things that gain popularity over a long period of time because of sort of the grassroots movement effect, you know. Over time, React and Vue and Svelte and all these other frameworks sort of borrow ideas from one another, and it's a bit more homogenous now than it used to be. But I'm so used to Vue after all these years, so I'm going to build it in Vue. I love Vue. More than that, I'm probably going to build it in Nuxt. So what I like about Nuxt, it's built on Vue, so it uses that same single file system, which I really appreciate. But it has so many wonderful features built in. So it'll generate a Vue application, which generally only runs client side, and it'll actually be able to render it, pre-render all those files so it can load faster. It has tons of wonderful helpers. It already comes with like a router installed. It has auto imports, so you don't have to import all these different files, yada, yada, yada. This is my favorite front-end framework. I use it all the time. I use it so much that I actually even have created my own little Bootstrap. It's probably under this. My own little Bootstrap called Construct. And so this is built on Nuxt, but I've added all sorts of proprietary plugins and components, composables, all sorts of things that help me build sites a little bit quicker in a way that is, built around my own personal framework or thinking models. Maybe it would be cool to actually just take a quick look at that, perhaps. Maybe I even have it. Oh, I already do. Construct. Oh, Cursor. Let's open that up in Cursor, maybe take a quick look. I guess I haven't opened up this Windows machine in a minute. Give it a second. Oh, there we go. Okay. I reckon all the dependencies are already installed, but we are going to just double check there. I'll circle back to that later. Let's go ahead. Let me zoom in a little bit. Maybe that's going to be helpful for you. I don't want to open it there. Why would I want to open that up in Cursor? That is so silly to me. Get out of here. Oops. We'll just type it the old-fashioned way. Okay, so this is the construct. Again, I will zoom in a bit. So I've got some foundational elements. I've got some atoms, molecules, and utilities here. I like the atomic design framework. That's generally my default. So these are all little categories of components that I've already built out. So I've got units which help define different spacing. Could be padding or margin or what have you. This is my own sort of like basically Tailwind classes, but this is much smaller than Tailwind. I've got some default ways of naming colors. I've got a grid system that is something I have spent a lot of time working on through the years. A type system. I particularly like type styles that scale with you over time or over viewport sizes when it hits a certain size. One of the best sites that does this is Teenage Engineering, but what they do is a little bit squirrely. They just have, it gets unreasonably small. You can't use that shit. It's ridiculous. They have a mobile site and they have the desktop site. Desktop site's absolutely gorgeous. It just feels like you're scanning a poster almost. I love it. Some people are like, but I can't see the whole image on the screen. Well, fucking scroll slow and take it in, baby. Beautiful visuals, great products. Look at that. I want it all. I don't want to pay for it, at any rate, but this idea was inspired by them, but it's real tricky. You can't just have typography that is relatively sized based on the container width. You have to, it's got to be an orchestration. So the margins have to be a variable relative size. The grid obviously has to be fluid, and you have to have the type. So it's the orchestration of all these things going from pixel values, or IMs, or what's called an absolute unit, a fixed value, to a relative unit, which is then calculated based on that viewport size. So what I do is I'll use those pixel units, because you can actually read this shit, unlike the teenage engineering approach. And then once you hit a certain size, right about there, yeah, and see, we don't see text sort of dancing and having to rewrap itself. It's just sort of scaling. That's how I like to do it. Not every website benefits from that. Maybe I do it on this website, maybe not. Sorry, I'm really droning on here. So I've got my type styles for that too. Love it. I've got some basic ideas and sort of foundational work around motion, easing functions. We've got some examples of different timing variables. We've got some effects out of the box, border radii. Sometimes I'll add shadows. For atoms, all right, here we get into, we take those foundational concepts and we start to actually make things with these. So these are spacing units using those units that we saw before. So you can add margin or padding to a particular item. And I have a space component, which I built out in Nuxt, and you just pass a couple of props in. And I also have linked these up to different breakpoint sizes, so you can adjust the spacing size based on breakpoint by passing that prop in. I'm really giving you a full tour of this particular framework here. Type size, or type component rather. Not much to show there other than you can basically decide or define, hey, I want this particular size. You can choose a color, and you can choose the element that you want to, what HTML element you want that text to be. Sometimes you might want a little piece of paragraph text that's a H1 size, or a headline 1 size. Sometimes you might want an H1 that's the size of a teeny tiny little piece of text. So this gives you that flexibility. I don't like the idea of the size always being assigned or attached to a particular heading level. So that's why I do that. Iconography out of the box. I believe I use, Heroicons. That's changed. I've used Feather and a couple other things. These are just icons I often use. You have the whole disposal, or have the whole library at your disposal if you want them. The pick component I use often. So this is handling all sorts of really amazing stuff under the hood. A really great preloader, loading states, all sorts of goodies here. It uses Nuxt image under the hood, but I've built some proprietary stuff in there. We've got video components. I pass alt text here. This actually goes on as an ARIA label because video, technically, there is no alt text. A couple different states here. Ambient presets, so things that just automatically hide and autoplay. Hide controls and autoplay and loop. To do that, you have to, of course, mute the video. What do I have here? A custom override, just showing controls. Love it. So on and so forth. I feel like I'm really kind of droning on here. So I'll probably start with this. Is the the long and short of it. But I think before I even get too far into that, what we should do is zoom back out for a second. And let's go over to Figma. I think the place where we probably should start is around content. So what I did, I sat down a couple of weeks ago perhaps, and I wrote down what sorts of pages I might need. I know that I need some sort of a work page, or I don't know what I'm going to call it, but it's a place to just showcase works in progress, final pieces. It's a little bit of everything. It's just going to be an index of stuff that I've made that will be highly filterable. And I know I needed some sort of an about page, and I'll probably have a section on the website to write things. So that's to come. But for the about piece, I wanted to share more than I normally do. I normally only talk about my work. But this is my corner of the internet. I want to talk about more things and turn this into a bit of a public journal. So I wrote down a little bit about who I am. I'll have some pictures of some sort, I imagine. I wrote about my work, some clients that I'm grateful I got a chance to work for. I even wrote a little bit about my history and sort of how I got into this industry, people who have inspired me, a little bit of a CV. Maybe I'll have some pictures of each sort of job or season of my life in here somehow. Yada, yada, yada. So I have an idea of the content I want. I don't think that the website's going to necessarily look like this, but it's helpful to have an idea of what we're building. And then what I've been doing is I also started building the backend. The backend I'm going to use is going to be Sanity because it's highly customizable. It's fairly easy to use. And what I want to do, I think I did it with this account. What I want to do is have essentially one content type called media, right? And media can be anything. It could be an image or video. It could be an audio clip, etc. And I'll show you what that might look like and why I want to do it this way. No. Yeah, XDED 2026. Okay, great. Media. All right, so here's an example of what I'm shooting for. This was last year. I was the lead designer on Claude.com, or the website for Claude, and this is just an asset for that. So I can choose the media type I want, image or video. I'm using Mux to host those videos, stream that content. I've got a couple of options to either autoplay it or not, which attaches to that video component that I shared earlier for the ambient play. Provide the alt text if possible or necessary. I always try to provide alt text, always, always, always. It's important to do that. Do that. Caption if I want. Categories. Okay, so this is going to be helpful for filtering the types of content. I've registered just a handful so far. I do a lot of typeface design, web development, or app development. I haven't used music yet because I don't have audio, but I might add that later on. Design, photography, art. And then for tags, this just gets a little bit more granular. Is it a scan, like a computer scanner? Is it a screenshot? Is it a 3D rendering? I do a bit of 3D. Was it a sketch, something I just was noodling on? Was it packaging design? Did I use AI using a diffusion network? Is it a website? Is it branding, illustration, print, poster, etc.? This will grow and change. The thing that is unknown here is clients. I also have a client type now, so I can assign this work to particular clients. So for this one, there's actually two clients. It's Claude, but also Anthropic. So I have that ability for it to be an array. I'm not doing case studies on this website right now. I'm just focusing on the blocks, just the images and videos, just the content. And I can grab references to these media blocks to shape case studies and pages down the road if I want. But right now, I just want a big old index of stuff. I just want this to basically be the record of my work and my career so far. I'm not going to post everything I create. That's just too much, and a lot of it's shit, you know? Stuff that was left on the cutting room floor for good reason. But the stuff I am proud of or think is worth sharing or just keeping track of, I'll save here. I've gone ahead and I've already added, and it's tedious. I'm doing this while I'm watching The Sopranos or whatever. I think I've added close to 300 different pieces so far. And it's a little bit scattered. As as much as I've tried to keep things really organized within my home server, they're spread out on different computers and what have you. So I'm doing my best to file them by date. I did create this function where, it's not pushed up live, I guess. You can click this and it will grab the EXIF data from the asset, whether it's an image or a video, and it will populate the date it was created. And if it was, say, a photograph, I don't know if this will work. Yeah, I think it will. No. How about if can I search this? Yeah, okay, cool. That'll do. If there's other EXIF data, like if it was an iPhone image, or in my case here, if it was taken by my old little, my little Ricoh GR. Let's see if this works. There you go. Then it'll populate that data. I like this because maybe down the road I'll have many more different cameras and I can kind of see what camera did I use there, and that'll be nice. What other sorts of bells and whistles have I already done here or added? Ooh, one really helpful thing. I quite like this a lot. Let me go to an image. Great. Oh, you don't see it here. I need to push the code live. There's a little button I've added called Generate Alt Text, and it leverages Claude to look at the image and it writes alt text for me. And it's actually very good. It's so much better than me having to go piece by piece, one by one, word by word. Sometimes the work needs a different explanation, but it's very mechanical and great at describing things in a descriptive and accurate way based on what it sees. So that's a pretty handy little bit. Maybe let's just take a quick look at what I have so far on the front end so we can see how that data is shaped. Okay, let's take a look here. npm run dev, huh? Oh, it doesn't like my shortcuts. Okay, so I have a crude little prototype here. It looks pretty ugly. I have media, and this is all the stuff that I've added to Sanity so far. And it is just a web page that randomizes all of those media assets. Some are videos, some are images. I think there's, how many have I added? 270. I've gone through most of the files up to 2017, and then I added a bunch of stuff that I did more recently, but there's a lot that's missing. So I think when this is said and done, it might be double that. It might be closer to about 600. I might need to be a little bit more selective, but I don't know, whatever. So I have all these different things, and I've got it set up so that you can click in, you can get the details on that if you want it. I also went ahead and I spun up logs, and this is where I'll probably write things. I don't know if I'm going to call it that. Here's a picture of my buddy Ryan cooking me dinner. What a beautiful man. That's my beautiful wife. So yeah, that's where I'm going to write things. And these two are considered media blocks. These are just important pieces of my life. I will probably have a tag to filter those out of this grid, but ultimately everything will be indexable using that media type, which is quite nice, I think. At any rate, I could scroll for a while. I'm not going to do that. So what I'm probably going to spend the next little while doing is just getting as much data added as I can. And then I will take a closer look at the design, and we're going to build this thing out, and it's going to be fun. That always made me chuckle. See if it loads. A fortune cookie that says fuck you. Anyways, I think that's enough for now. That's the goal. That's a little bit of information about what we're wanting to do. A little bit of information about how we're going to do it. And maybe the next video we can spend a little bit of time looking through the sanity side of things. Maybe I can go through some of the custom components that I discussed, like the generating of the alt text, or I don't know. We'll see where the spirit leads. But I'm going to spend the next little while just adding a bunch of data, images, videos, maybe even audio, songs that I've recorded over the years. And then we'll take a closer look at how we might want to mold this stuff into an experience that's enjoyable to navigate. Although I kind of love how crude this is. It's just inline images, or media assets, all the same height. They naturally just sort of reflow. It's like, it reminds me of the old web. There's like nothing fancy happening here, and I love it. All right, I'm going to stop talking now. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you later.